Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and another patron requested review. This time it is from Aaron Anderson. He requested the film The Amityville Horror. Bizarrely, a film I've never seen but heard much about, although I have seen the remake. It was released in 1979. It's directed by Stuart Rosenberg and it stars James Brolin, father of Josh Brolin, Margot and Rod Steiger, and it sees a family play again. Kidder and Brolin move into this house in which there was a murder, kind of unexplained, bizarre murder that went on there. Supposedly based on a true story. This, although how much of it you could take as truth and how much you should take with a pinch of salt remains to be seen. I don't know the facts surrounding the case, so I couldn't tell you. But yeah, so they move into this house, and there is a spiritual force there, a dark spiritual force that really wants them out and wants to make their life a misery. And yeah, so it's the kind of typical Hollywood movie version of a haunted house story. So yeah, the question is it any good? Before I watched this, I checked it out on Letterboxd just to see what I was letting myself in for, what kind of score it has, and it's at that 3.0, dead on 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So yeah, I know it has a reputation. It's considered a classic in many quarters, so I would have expected a slightly higher score, to be honest, going into this. But I don't know, maybe modern audiences have lowered that score, I don't know. But whatever, I went into it with an open mind. And I gotta say, it is quite an interesting film. I wouldn't say it is particularly scary, although it does have a bit of a creep factor going on throughout it. But I do think the story is quite interesting. So particularly there's an element in there with Rod Steiger. So Rod Steiger plays this priest, and it's been arranged, I guess, off screen because we never see the arrangements being made, but it's been arranged that he's going to come round and just look the house over, bless it. So the character played by Margot Kidder, she's a Catholic, and presumably, obviously, he's her priest. And she's no doubt asked him to come in, bless the house, as is a thing. And when he arrives, they're out. They've gone out. So he lets himself in and he starts to have a wander around the house. And these spiritual forces come against him and he feels ill. When he tries to bless the house, all these flies kind of swarm in, and this voice, he hears this voice, this evil sounding voice telling him to get out. That's a really creepy moment, I think. The interesting thing about the film for me is this character and the fact that he never comes face to face with Kidder or Brolin's character. So this couple that that he knows, that he's supposed to be part of their life, they never actually meet during the film. There's a couple of times where they kind of speak to each other on the phone, but the evil force within the house kind of cuts the call off or does something to break up the call. So it's that stuck out to me. It stuck out that actually you're expecting the whole time this priest to go to the house at some point and be the saviour of some kind, to be very much like The Exorcist. You expect this is the Father Merrin type character who is going to come and help this family out, and he doesn't. And they never even meet. They never even share screen time, and I couldn't get that out of my head. So that's quite interesting that these characters would all have such a big role in the film but never actually meet. And I think that's very purposeful, because I think ultimately what the film is about, what it is saying, is that when the church ceases to take part in people's lives, and particularly refuses to acknowledge the spiritual element of life, that's when everything starts to fall apart, and that's when evil can then take a foothold. So you have this priest played by Rod Steiger who goes to his higher ups within the church and tells them about his experience in this house and tells them that something needs doing, an exorcism, that either way this family is in danger and they need to intervene. But they scoff at him and they act like the things he's seen, the things he's heard are all in his head and he needs to take some time off. And these are priests, these are people who should be dealing with the spiritual, should be acknowledging the spiritual, but they've become so caught up within the secular world and with modern psychology and things like that they don't even see the spiritual anymore. These are people who are supposed to be in charge or tasked with the responsibility of looking after people's spiritual well-being. But when they can't even acknowledge that spiritual elements exist, then there is trouble, and it causes division within the church. First and foremost, we see that this priest, played by Rod Steiger, is kind of ostracized in a way, and he goes on the attack against his superiors vocally, so to speak. He really railroads them, but they put him in his place, or the place that they deem him to have. And he's quietened. He's shut up, basically. He's told to go away, shut up, be quiet, keep his nose out. And as a result of that, like I say, there's a separation there in the church. There's division. There's not unity, there's division. And that directly affects the household, this family. And there is even division within the family. So you've got Margot Kidder's character, who is a woman of faith. She's a Catholic. And then you've got Brolin's character, James Brolin's character, who, there are times when we see him scoff a bit at religion, or he doesn't show a lot of respect towards it. Like, for example, when they're unpacking their cases, their bags and boxes and whatnot, he takes out this crucifix, which obviously is an item that means something to Kidder's character, and he asks, where shall I put this? And she tells him which wall to put it on, and as he's kind of traveling through the house with it, he's throwing it about like it's just an item. He doesn't respect it. He's not a person that has the kind of faith that Kidder has. So right there we see there is a division within the family unit when it comes to faith. And when you throw the division of the church itself, the people who are supposed to be responsible for the family's spiritual well-being, when there's division there, this family doesn't really stand a chance. And as a result of that, they are kicked out of the house by this evil entity by the end of the film. They have no choice but to leave. They can't come against the forces of darkness because they're not united on a spiritual front, and they don't have the support from the people who should be giving it to them on a spiritual front. And I think that's ultimately what the film is saying, is when there's division, spiritually speaking, in the church, and division, spiritually speaking, within the family, you can't do anything against the forces of evil. I found that really interesting. It made me kind of like the film. I felt like it had something to say. It was really about something. The actors all do pretty decent jobs. I only really know Margot Kidder, to be honest, from Superman. I've always liked her as Lois Lane, but I've not had much else to go on when it comes to judging her, other than the little stint she did in Smallville, which again is within the Superman universe. But no, she acquits herself well here. I think it's a fairly thankless role. She's not given much to do. She's obviously set up as the woman of faith, but then beyond that, she's just there to be kind of scared and not really put up much of a fight. But again, I think that's because of this whole element that they're trying to show us, which is the division in the family and the church, which kind of means that you can't put up a fight. But yeah, Brolin he's a bit of a strange one in this. He has this vibe about him that he's going to snap at any moment, and obviously that's purposeful. We see that the forces of darkness are at work in this house, and they're particularly working on him. So we're always questioning, is he going to be the next man to wipe out his own family the way that the guy at the beginning did? The one who killed his family in this house prior to them moving in. Is he going to follow suit? Is darkness going to take hold of him to the point where he kills his family? Thankfully not, but again, that's because they run. You know, there's nothing else they can do but run, and that's what they do. They leave the house and everything that's in it behind them. But yeah, I like the way Brolin kind of plays that. There's a very uneasy kind of dark edge about him throughout this whole film, where you really don't know if this guy's going to snap. Some amusing moments from it as well, like when he's chopping wood with the axe, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to step back a bit because you look like a crazy person. So yeah, he's good. I like him. And Rod Steiger pretty much chews up the scenery. I can't say I've seen Rod Steiger in much. I've seen him in a few things, and I've heard his reputation. He does have a bit of a reputation of kind of going large, of chewing up scenery, and I don't know if that is to his detriment elsewhere, but here it's certainly a plus. I love the scene. It's my favourite scene, I'd say, in the film, the scene between him and his superiors when he's really trying to fight for this family, when he's really trying to get something done to help them, and it's falling on deaf ears. And yeah, like I say, Steiger goes large. Some might call it overacting. I found it quite gripping, to be honest. I thought it was a really great performance, although, like I say, not incredibly subtle. I like the production design of the film as well, and the cinematography. It's shot with a lot of wide angles. You know, we're in this house, and we go on a lot of wides so that we see various shadows and crevices and places that evil might jump out, and this, that and the other. Like when Steiger goes into the room where he hears the voice telling him to get out, it's framed on a wide, and we see the door. Behind the door you can see the corridor, and so any moment you're expecting something to come running in or jumping in or whatever. So it's the cinematography helps to create that sense of dread throughout. And again, like the production design of the house, I believe the house, the real life house, was a much smaller kind of building, less imposing. Whereas this, they've obviously, they've designed it, they've created it. It purposefully looks like a face, So when you look up from below, you've got these two windows at the top that look like eyes, and there are times when the cinematography kind of goes into this red colorization of it, which again creates this sense of menace and dread that the house has. So yeah, it makes the house a character in very much the same way as the Bates Motel house is a character. When you think of Psycho, that house, the Bates house, the family home, it's very much a character in just as much as any of the human characters are, and I would say it's the same here. The Amityville house itself is very much a character. I like the score as well by Lalo Schifrin. I think is how you pronounce that. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's very just unsettling. You've got like a bit of a choir, a vocal kind of thing going on with almost angelic, but just a little bit creepy. It does the job. It's effective. I do think that back in the day when this came out, if I'd have watched it back then, if I'd have been alive back then, it probably would have had a greater effect on me with regards to the scares. But I feel like now it is a little bit dated. Again, like I say, it's not really that scary. It does have a sense of dread throughout. It does have a sense that anything's going to happen or something's going to happen at any moment, but it just plays with that throughout. And then by the time you get to the end and you realise there's actually not that much that has happened, really. And it's, I'm not sure it'll stand up to repeat viewings. That's the thing. I feel like perhaps if I watched it again, I'd be bored a bit because I know what's coming. So I don't know. I couldn't say until I give it a repeat viewing. But on this viewing, I will say I think it is a good film. It's very solid. I like the themes and the way they're explored. I think they're very clear. I think the film has a good point to make. And I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Like I say, depending on how it would measure up in a repeat viewing, that could go up to a 4. But I can understand why it is considered a classic in some quarters, but I think maybe you have to be of the time that it was made in order to fully appreciate that, or to fully appreciate this as a classic. But I get it. So yeah, but it is a good film. I do recommend it, and if you haven't seen it, do check it out. Thank you, Aaron, once again for requesting this and for being a patron. If you want to become a patron yourself, or you want to look at what it's all about, do check out my Patreon page and have a look at the perks that are there for people that want to become a patron to the channel. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for watching. Do comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the movie if you have seen it. I'm sure Aaron would like to know your thoughts as well. But until next time, cracking.